So, happy Sundays, and let's make it a day to celebrate the day that our president dodged bullets in Butler, Pennsylvania. This is the 1 year anniversary where, lucky enough, he was able to dodge that guy was trying to kill him. But let's take a look at Sunday Morning Future with Maria Bartiromo. Let's see if she brings it up. The fact that this is the 1 year anniversary. And thank God the man dodged it. I can't believe it's been a year already. Hey, June 13th, going down as presidential history. All right, let's take a look at Sunday morning, see what they're talking about, what's going on. And thank you for joining me. By the way, my name is Noel. Hopefully you enjoy the show. And give this video a thumbs up before you go anywhere. All right, let's take a look.
Good Sunday morning, everyone. Welcome to Sunday Morning Futures. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Maria Bartiromo. Today, sanctions or ceasefire? President Trump's ire turns to Russia as the commander-in-chief teases something big to come against Putin's Russia money machine. The Senate is on board, but will sanctions on Russian oil come to the floor of the House? Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, is here on the wars that President Trump is trying to end, along with a look at the impact of the big, beautiful bill. Plus, General Jack Keane on Russia's war in Ukraine and Israel's assault on Iran's nuclear capability. After my exclusive with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
We got Trump, the first peaceful president. So if he brings peace all around the world, I want to see how the fake media is going to cover it. What are they going to say? Like, are they finally going to give this man props? Let's see.
It's an entirely different Middle East because not only did we act there and achieved supremacy over the skies of Tehran, nobody believed that would happen. Destroyed the top leadership, the top military leadership, and these, evil scientists that were working to develop nuclear bombs to annihilate the Jewish state. Not only did we achieve that, but President Trump came in and did something that no American president did now.
Why should we trust that they would not start up again?
Because they're afraid. Because they know, they felt the might of America, the might of Israel, and the combined might of Israel and America. And as I said, you have brave pilots. Our pilots struck like lightning. Our soldiers fought like lions. And our lions roared throughout the world. It's made an impact, not only in the Middle East, it's made an impact around the world.
And also ahead, MAGA fury. Trump supporters split over the DOJ's handling of sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein, forcing President Trump to weigh in to try and calm the crowds as the DOJ launches a criminal investigation of the Russia hoax architects John Brennan and James Comey. Coming up, Carter Page victimized by Jim Comey's FBI, lived to tell about it, and he'll join us to spill the beans on their political law.
It's crazy to see the FBI going up against the DOJ. Like, we're learning so much, like what's their roles and what they should do for the people. Like, what information should they make public and where they're at odds with each other. To me, it's all a learning case, what we're seeing, how the FBI battles the DOJ.
There. Plus, President Trump wants Jay Powell out at the Fed for being too late and too political. Former Federal Reserve Governor and potential successor Kevin Warsh is here with a look at the economy and the future of the Federal Reserve. Then political strategy with the former Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, on the Democrats' spin of the big, beautiful bill and the pivot towards socialism as the Republicans clock in more wins ahead of next year's re-election races.
We got a guy that's running as a Democratic socialist. Like, are you serious? That's like the all the way left team, the Democratic left side of the Democratic Party. Insane.
It's all right here, right now on Sunday Morning Futures. And we begin this Sunday morning with President Trump preparing to take action against Russia this week for their continued attack on Ukraine and Ukrainian citizens. On Capitol Hill, Congress is preparing to pass bipartisan legislation that would place sanctions on Russia, as well as a 500% tariff on any country that imports energy from Russia. Meanwhile, the president making good on his promises to extend the tax cuts, bolster immigration enforcement, and defense spending, signing into law the one big beautiful bill on America's 249th birthday, July 4th. Now, Republicans are seeking to do another mega bill by the end of the year. Joining me now in the Sunday Morning Futures exclusive is the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. Mr. Speaker, thanks so much for being here this morning.
Hey, Maria, good morning. Always a pleasure to be with you.
Let me start with Russia, because I know there's a lot of support in the Senate for this. 80 senators or plus have supported potential sanctions on Russia and its energy. Would you take that up? Would you take that to the floor?
I would. I think there's a big appetite for that in the House as well. I think tough sanctions are called for. I mean, Vladimir Putin has shown an unwillingness to work with President Trump to bring an end to this this unjust war on Ukraine. And we got to talk tough and we got to act tough. That's what he responds to. He's a bully, and if you don't treat him as such, then he'll continue to run his rampage through Ukraine. And we got to bring an end to that. We need peace in this conflict. It's long overdue.
And of course, part of the money being allocated toward defense, an increase there is in the big, beautiful bill. Congratulations to you for getting that over the finish line in the time that you promised, July 4th. The president signed it into law. Tell me how that money will be allocated with regard to defense. What do you want to see?
That was kind of epic because presidents are always making promises. And for once, this man kept his promise. He said by July 4th, that means he had the whole Republican Party pushing this forward. And unbelievably, it came true. When everybody knows that politicians make promises and always got to skip it and say we're going to have to wait a little more and never come through with their promises. So we are living in some crazy times, man, watching incredible things happen.
Well, look, the big, beautiful bill was a landmark achievement. America First is no longer just an agenda. It's now the law of the land. And to your point, the big investment there was in border security and national defense. The bill did a lot of things, but this is really important. So this money will go to help us ensure the policy of peace through strength. We have to invest appropriately and smartly in our military industrial base right now. It's a dangerous world where our adversaries are China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. They've united together in so many ways. And we're showing everybody around the world, like that little clip you just showed from Prime Minister Netanyahu, that America's back. And that strength is what is going to maintain the peace. So these investments are important. It's in naval vessels and ships, in our new kind of warfare. And by the way, there's an investment here in the Golden Dome, which will help us have real security in our homeland. So lots of things here, very strategic. We're spending the money efficiently and effectively. That's what the American people demand and deserve. And
of course, you and your colleagues were also able to stop what would have been the biggest tax increase than anyone has seen with the extension of the tax cuts. I want to get your take on what's next. Where does the legislative agenda go now? And are you expecting to do a second reconciliation package later on in the year?
Yeah, we're implementing a playbook that we designed well over a year ago. About 15 months ago, we began this process, understanding and believing that we would win unified government, that we'd have the White House, the Senate, and the House in the Republican hands, and that we would not want to waste this historic opportunity with President Trump coming back to the White House and us having the responsibility of fixing every metric of public policy that Biden and Harris and the Democrats destroyed over the previous 4 years. So the big, beautiful bill was the first big step in that, but we have multiple steps ahead of us. We have long planned for at least 2, possibly 3 reconciliation bills, one in the fall and one next spring, that would continue to allow us to do this on a partisan basis where we only need Republican votes and we don't have to drag Democrats along. They are no appetite to fix any of the mess. We have to do it ourselves.
See, this time around when Trump became president, he set everything up. So like that when he takes office, no delays. Because last time, all they did was delay. Just trying to put laws and put judges to sue him for everything when he didn't get a lot accomplished. But this time around, listen to what he's saying, man. All this was planned well ahead. That's crazy. Let's keep watching.
So yes, that's next. In addition to that, we will continue to get the country back on a path to fiscal responsibility by rescissions packages that will come from the White House and will enact and claw back spending and eliminate fraud, waste, and abuse in the multiple reconciliation packages, and in appropriating at lower levels of funding. All these things will be done while we're codifying more of President Trump's executive orders. He's been very busy. We will be as well. We have a lot more work ahead of us.
Well, it's a great point that you make, because some people were critical of the fact that we haven't seen a lot of codifying in the Congress of President Trump's executive orders. Where specifically would you want to see that?
Yeah. Well, we did. Over almost 30 of them were included in the big, beautiful bill. So that was a lawmaking exercise. The president's now signed them into law and they're codified. So it's not a temporary thing. They'll be permanent in the law. And we've done a number, about 15 or 20 additional executive orders that we've already codified in the House. We'll continue that process. We wanted to get as many of them as we could into the reconciliation package because we knew that we were certain that that would actually be signed into law and it wouldn't just be a feel-good exercise. So more of that will continue going forward. The president's been one of the most prolific, I think arguably the most successful president in the first 6 months of this term than any previous president. Look how many things have been accomplished. A lot of it's been done through executive order, so Congress has its role to play now as well.
Well, that's a big message, an important message for you going into the re-election races next year. In terms of debt and the spending cuts that so many people want to see, that was really the pushback or the debate among you and your colleagues. Do you feel you have the support in terms of spending cuts? Should you actually get to do that second reconciliation package you're referring to?
I do. Look, the Republican Party is the party of fiscal responsibility, and we're going to continue to demonstrate that. In the big, beautiful bill, people call it a spending bill. It wasn't. The only increases in spending were for those two priorities, border and national defense. Everything else was carving back and saving money from the budget, which is why you call it a reconciliation bill. So we would have actually achieved, and we will, in excess of $1.6 trillion in savings. That is an historic number.
You know what's crazy? That the Democrats, all they want to point out is how much money is being spent on this bill. They never point out the good things about it. It's real crazy.
No Congress, no legislative body in the history of the planet Earth has ever saved so much in a bill. Now, it's just the first step, though, Maria, as we point out. We have a $37 trillion federal debt. You and I talk about this all the time. We all do. And we have to have a combination of reduced spending and greater economic growth. We put jet fuel into the economy with the One Big Beautiful Bill. It will be that. And extraordinary growth. We're projecting 3% going forward and $4 trillion in new revenue just out of the legislation. But more is ahead. And the tariff policy and the other policies of the Trump administration have been wildly successful. In fact, we had a budget surplus, as you know, in the month of June, the first time since 2017, when President Trump was last in the White House. So more of that is ahead. Every American will feel it. And the Big Beautiful Bill was geared and written for a lower and middle class earners in the country. They're going to be feeling really good as we go into that midterm election in 26.
I'm really glad you mentioned the surplus. I was going to raise that because there was so much hysteria over President Trump's tariffs. And yet, look what it is getting you, $100 billion in tariff revenue on an annualized basis, actually creating a surplus for the month of June. The last time we saw a surplus was the president's first term in 2017. But sir, I want to switch gears and ask you a bit about the FBI and the DOJ, because we still don't have enough information on the shooter. It is 1 year ago today that the president was shot out and, of course, got grazed and hit in the ear. And people are wondering why we don't have more information about this. I spoke with the FBI Director Kash Patel about it recently, and here's what he told me. Watch.
Two reasons, two open, ongoing prosecutions. So 2 of the investigations are obviously closed because the individuals are dead. But there's 2 live prosecutions. And so we can't get ahead of the federal court case. A lot of that information will come out in the federal court cases, but we have personally invested our time in making sure that we have looked at any possible international connections to terrorism and adversaries alike. And we've both been down to Quantico.
There are so many questions about the shooter for this anniversary, Trump year anniversary of dodging this killer. And let me read some of the comments that people posted here, because the guy's name was Thomas Crooks, and there's so many questions about him. Here's a comment by Amber, and it says, Thomas Crook from Butler, PA, was a registered Republican. And I hate the fact, by the way, that a lot of Democrats try to use this talking point to try to say that it wasn't a Democrat just tried to kill Trump, that it was actually a registered Republican. But I don't know how much that plays into the whole situation. The guy was a maniac. So maybe this was part of his maniac plot. So people don't know that he's part of the Democratic Party. So again, the guy's psychotic. Next, he said, many of his former classmates made public statements about how conservative he was. It ruined the fantasy that Democrats tried to harm Trump. Again, we don't know how crazy this guy was, because the fact that you're shooting at a guy running for presidency, that lets you know the man is insane. So I don't know how big the plot was. Maybe he registered Republican to get Trump, and then they wouldn't find out more information about the maniac. But I don't know, man. I don't know if that was part of the plot. Registering as a Republican, so like that, people don't know how far the plot thickens. I think the guy was a Democrat running as a Republican, so people just find out less information about him. Let me see what else Amber wrote. Here is a quote from one of Crook's former classmates, Max R. Smith. Wrote, the majority of the class were on the liberal side, but Tom, no matter what, always stood his ground on the conservative side. So the guy was a conservative. God only knows. What do you think triggered him losing his mind? What do you think caused him to do something as crazy as attempting to kill a president or a guy running for president who was an ex-president? Like, you really got to have your marbles on another level to try to run this scheme and try to get away with it. So, trying to shoot the president, Trump, insane. So all of this could be part of the plot to people to think that this conservative guy went ahead and tried to off the ex-president. Hard to tell, but they're doing the investigations. Again, thank God Trump is hard to kill and was able to dodge this maniac. Let's see what else.
Speaker, do you have any other information about this shooter?
I don't. Look, we had a bipartisan task force that worked in the House very, very quickly and looked very closely at what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania. The terrible mistakes that were made there, the errors. They came up with 30 recommendations to address those mistakes and ensure they don't happen again. We have new leadership, of course, at the Secret Service. We're counting on them to do that job, and I think they will. We have some very patriotic, faithful people who work in that agency, but they have a big task. So does DOJ, and so does the FBI. That work.
I'm glad that the Secret Service got rid of DEI, trying to hire people just based on their sex and on their race. That is so dumb, and that puts the president under threat. How about getting the best of the best to do their job?
Has to continue at a steady pace, and the American people deserve answers. There's more to come.
Mr. Speaker, real quick before you go, I know you're waiting on the supplemental package for the emergency money for the devastation and the tragedy in Texas. What's the timing on that? How much do you expect?
Well, I know that we've got every available federal resource there working, and they're still in the recovery mode at the moment. It'll take a while to tabulate what the losses are. It was devastating, as we know, the loss of human life, just unspeakable, the tragedy there. But the way the process works is FEMA has about $13 billion in a reserve fund right now. They have enough to do the work right now. We'll see when the White House comes forward, gets the final assessments from the state, what supplemental funding requests are made, and we'll address them appropriately.
Mr. Speaker, it's great to have you this morning. Thank you, sir.
You too. Thanks so much.
Like I said, man, that guy that tried to kill Trump, a registered Republican and a conservative. I don't know, man. I think that's a great talking point for Democrats to say that the real killers are the Republican conservative ones. Those are the threat. When in reality, we know that the Democrats are the ones doing the real damage to everyone, trying to enslave everybody, right? Try to keep control. But they want to use that narrative, because it's all about the narrative, that Thomas Crook was a conservative who lost his mind. I don't think so. He wasn't a conservative Republican. In reality, he was a maniac. So think about that. The guy was crazy.
Speaker Mike Johnson, thank you. And now this. President Trump told me that he does not believe that the Iranian regime moved any enriched uranium before the U.S. struck those 3 facilities. Do you agree with that? Do you believe that Iran has hidden any enriched uranium?
Well, we think we know where it is. It's sort of buried underground. And we don't have contrary information. That's our intelligence too. But I think, it's like we had 2 lumps of cancer. One was that could kill you. One was the nuclear cancer, and they were rushing to weaponize their enriched uranium. When they did that, after we crushed Hezbollah and after we got rid of Nasrallah, they were, the Iranian axis in the Middle East was broken. So what did they have left? Well, they rushed to nuclear weapons, and that was one cancerous growth that could have killed us.
How close were they to the bomb?
I think within a year they would have had.
Within a year?
Within a year, probably more than one bomb. So that would have been, and they say openly, death to Israel, death to America. They, unlike other nuclear powers, they could probably throw that weapon at us, and that's the end of Israel and the end of Jewish history. That's not going to happen. We couldn't allow.
That was like the main narrative, the fact that these guys were going to do something crazy. So therefore, we need America to intervene and do what they do. So, and not only that, but I hate the fact that politicians keep saying that this could signal the beginning of World War III. So we got to be careful and not get involved. Like, so afraid until we had Trump go in. No fear. And just destroying their facilities. Shout out to Trump.
Wow.
And that's Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in my exclusive on Fox Business' Mornings with Maria this week on the U.S. and Israel's massive success in taking out Iran's nuclear capabilities. Joining me now with analysis on the Israel-Iran and Russia conflicts is Fox News senior strategic analyst, retired 4-star General Jack Keane. General, thanks so much for being here.
Delighted to be here, Maria.
So what happens now? What is your assessment of what has taken place?
Yeah, well, first of all, certainly, as we've all seen, the Israeli and U.S.-supported attack on Iran's nuclear enterprise was quite successful. U.S. and Israeli intelligence agree that all those sites are either severely damaged or completely destroyed. The program set back a number of years as a result of it. In terms of the centrifuges themselves, there were about 18,000 of them, most of them advanced. They were located in Natanz and Fordow, and they're destroyed or so damaged that they're not repairable. When it comes to enriched uranium, the Isfahan site had the most of it. Some of that enriched uranium certainly is still on the ground. It's likely in powder form. But the rubble on top of it prevents anybody from getting access to it without a major recovery operation. If the Iranians attempt to recover it, the Israelis have promised to conduct an attack on it, and certainly President Trump has already sanctioned that. And if necessary, if it required the United States participation, which I doubt, he would support that as well. So all eyes.
It's crazy that the fake news, all they want to talk about the fact that there's a possibility that Iranian drove off with the powder. That Trump did nothing. Nothing happened. We are losers. They have all their facilities and they are capable of destroying America. So boo-hoo, Trump, you missed. When in reality, Trump didn't miss.
Are on Iran right now, Maria. What are they going to do? Are they going to try to recover their nuclear program and rebuild it? Are they going to start it over at a secret site? And it's likely Israeli already has some ideas of where that would be and what it would look like. And the Israelis also have covert operations that they're very good at. They hit Natanz and in 2019 and 2020, and you saw what they do in terms of killing nuclear scientists and military leaders. Those operations will likely continue covertly to make certain that they're not a restart of this nuclear program.
Yeah.
My assessment is Iran still wants to rebuild and establish a nuclear program because they believe that's preservation of the.
And that's going to take years for them to reestablish another program where Trump is going to find out and blow that new facility. So you're facing crazy times.
Regime. So all eyes are going to be on them going forward for sure.
General, let me ask you about the Russia-Ukraine conflict as well. We are waiting to see what President Trump is going to say tomorrow. What are your expectations? Ceasefire, or should there be sanctions on Russia? What do you think?
Everything is
Well,
on,
I think
everything is on the table. I think Trump said that. Whatever needs to happen, he's going to do it. Don't take anything off the table. So sanctions it is.
what we have witnessed now for so many weeks is certainly an honest attempt by the president with Putin to get him to come to the negotiating table. And remember, it was a minimal request. We were talking about a 30-day ceasefire. And here we are many, many weeks later. And what has Putin done? He has escalated the war rather dramatically, and particularly against Ukrainian citizens. He's trying to break their will in support of the government to force Zelensky to come to the negotiating table with Russia and make some serious concessions that Zelensky is obviously not prepared to make at this time. And what has that led to President Trump? Well, it has frustrated him. And certainly what Putin wanted to frustrate the president. He wants the president to be so frustrated that he'll pull away his support from Ukraine. Well, he accomplished one part of that. The president is frustrated. Well, guess what? He's not pulling away from Ukraine. As a matter of fact, tomorrow he's going to announce his support for Ukraine, a military assistance program for sure. And I think he's going to put a program on the table that will likely not have any taxpayer money involved in the funding of it. And two, an economic package that he's going to sanction and permit the United States Senate to go forward with, which the House and the Speaker is interested in as well, would eventually take up themselves. But interesting is the EU is taking on very tough sanctions as well. So I think it's a two-pronged approach to dealing with Putin. Obviously, this is a serious change in the relationship. Putin tried to talk nice to the president, and he played hard. That's the Putin style, right? The president put up with talking nice, and now the president's playing hard. That's kind of where we're at on this thing.
Do you know if Russian forces seized Ukraine's lithium deposit in the region that was part of the agreement with President Trump and Zelensky for those rare earth minerals in Ukraine? Is Russia trying to seize those deposits?
Not that I'm aware of. They may be, but the fact of the matter is that mineral deal that the United States made with Ukraine, I mean, that is a futuristic, stabilizing factor that establishes an economic relationship with the United States long term, but also obviously a political relationship and an implied security relationship to protect the investment. That's been undertaken there. That in itself was a significant game changer on the part of the administration and Zelensky.
Very much so. General, it's great to see you this morning. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, great talking to you, Maria.
And
Thank
to
you.
you, General Jack Keane. Thank you. Quick break, and then questions are rising over the Department of Justice and the FBI's handling of two major cases: Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking and alleged blackmail, and the Russia collusion lie. Former FBI Director James Comey and former CIA Director John Brennan are now under criminal investigation by the DOJ for their roles in the Trump-Russia collusion hoax. But will anyone ever see accountability? Former Trump campaign advisor Carter Page, whose life was upended by the hoax, will join us with reaction when we come back. Stay with us.
Man, that Epstein list, like, if they don't have anything to prosecute, or maybe the powerful men who are on the list, man, they're making a phone call, sending their money, so Trump doesn't prosecute. So it's crazy. Conspiracy theories all day.
Strzok and company came in here with the James Bakers of the world and intentionally lied to a federal court only to rig a presidential election by lying to the American public and using taxpayer dollars, likely illegally, to fund this entire operation, and then withhold exculpatory information from a federal court that I used to appear before to manhunt terrorists. That's what broke the FBI. And then when they were caught, they lied about it. And you and a few others like Dan and others were brave enough to cover it 6, 7, 8 years ago. And we're still talking about it today because as Congress is working rigorously with us, the Crossfire Hurricane documents are coming fast and hard. And they're being sent there unredacted so we can have full accountability.
You said Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. People don't believe it.
He killed himself. You want me to?
It's like, believe me, bro. I am telling you, I did the research. As a matter of fact, this guy Bongino, he was one of the #1 people who should say there's more to it than what they're saying. Look behind the curtains. Something happened. And now for him to tell you nothing happened, trust me, I looked into it. Do you understand, bro? Nothing happened.
I've seen the whole file. He killed himself.
Crazy.
And that's FBI Director Kash Patel and Deputy Director Dan Bongino from my exclusive interview at FBI headquarters earlier this year. Since then, AG Pam Bondi said that the Epstein case is now closed, while the Department of Justice has opened a criminal investigation into former FBI Director James Comey and former CIA Director John Brennan over their handling of the Trump-Russia collusion.
Trump is like, I don't even know anything about that. Good luck to those guys. Because the DOJ is heading in this and doing all the hard work of making sure these guys pay for destroying the government accountability or ethics.
In 2016, now almost 10 years ago. The DOJ is looking into whether Brennan made false statements to Congress while Comey signed 3 out of 4 warrants to spy on the Trump campaign, including spying on my next guest, who at the time was a Trump advisor in 2016-17. Joining me now is former Trump campaign advisor Carter Page, who was spied on by the DOJ for a year with no charges ever brought against him. The Justice Department would later admit that at least 2 of the FISA warrants used against him were not valid. Carter, thank you so much for being here this morning. Tell us about that. You were spied on for about a year. James Comey signed 3 of those warrants to do so. How did that impact your life? I want to understand more why this is a criminal investigation into these 2 people.
Well, I think as per that quote you had from the senior administration official from your interview at FBI headquarters a couple months ago, there have been some ongoing revelations in terms of all the wrongdoing that happened. And unfortunately, and as the director then said, we still don't have all of the correct information. So unfortunately, look, my life was essentially completely destroyed, but there are so many other dimensions beyond this right now. And I think that's leading to a lot of the major controversies. And frankly, Maria, it's leading to a lot of the problems. He alluded to the problems in U.S. federal courts. Well, those problems have only escalated, and they continue in the same court that I've continued to litigate this on for, the same courthouse I've been litigating this for basically 8+ years now.
Well, Carter, I mean, you say your life was pretty much destroyed. I mean, look, you were spied on. What does that mean? They were looking at your emails, your texts, your phone calls. What does that mean when you say your life was destroyed? Because, I mean, they made a decision to spy on then candidate Trump and then President Trump. How were you impacted? You are an American citizen. Look, you are a patriot. You actually worked with the CIA to try to take down bad guys.
That's crazy.
So what did they do to you, Carter?
Well, and that's the biggest thing, Maria. Beyond what they did specifically to me, it really had so much impact on so many other lives. There were countless lives that were destroyed. And, they're often referred to as the remnants, all the people that were at the center of this Russia hoax, immediately targeted and really suffered so much damage for basically all of the years following the Obama-Biden's first administration from which ended in 2021, thankfully. So, and unfortunately, it continues to escalate, as you've been discussing earlier in this show, in terms of the ongoing conflicts in Europe, because the lack of truth, Maria, has only led to further escalation.
It's crazy. He didn't mention how it impacted him. Were they checking his phones, his emails? What were they doing to him? not talking about it, that's not good.
and damage to the United States' relationship in the world.
Yeah, I mean, look, you say the lack of information, and I think that's one of the things that some MAGA supporters of President Trump are angry about. They wanted to know more about Jeffrey Epstein. Is that what you're referring to?
Well, partially. I mean, that's important, but there's so much beyond that. And look, I mean, per that interview you had at FBI headquarters, unfortunately, related to that same government agency, on March 25th, there was an order and a presidential memorandum from the White House signed by President Trump demanding immediate declassification of materials related to that. And in that interview, you showed a clip of, unfortunately, he talked a little bit about sending stuff to Congress, you know, the dribbling out to Congress. Unfortunately, our court system remains completely broken at the district court level in Washington, but also at the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia as well, the second highest court in the United States.
Well,
so it's an ongoing problem that continues to have serious repercussions for President Trump and our country, beyond for, you know, the destruction it's done to me.
Because many of the players are still there, right? Wasn't it Judge Boasberg who gave Kevin Kleinsmith a slap on the wrist for not telling the truth about who you were and what you did? And in fact, now it's Judge Boasberg again trying to stop President Trump's agenda 10 years later.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. And unfortunately, as you and I discussed the night after my Crime Victims' Rights Act testimony in Judge Boasberg's court, all I had asked for was to be named an amicus in the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, the totally broken court system which remains. But unfortunately, nothing's been done. And it's only escalated with that same case going up to the federal appellate court there. And it only continued and only got worse, which had to get reformed at the Supreme Court. So we'll see how that turns out.
Carter, thank you. We're going to be watching this as closely as we have been.
Yeah, this guy seems crazy. I wonder why he keeps blinking like that. He's going through some personal issues.
Certainly. Former Trump campaign advisor, Carter.
All right. Is it over? No. So, yeah, a lot of things are happening. Let me real
Europe's policy rate and the American rate. And if you look at the normal relationship between the European rate.
Yeah, let me read a comment made here by a viewer. Gary Patch wrote, Trump is doing everything to distract being a PDF file. So what, you saying that Trump is part of the list? He's on a client list for being a pedo? I don't know, man. But you know what? Because they don't want to release the list. Conspiracy theories, yeah. He might be on there. Doesn't want to come off as a PDF. You know what that means.
Rates and the U.S. rate, then the U.S. rate right now would be about 1.5% lower than it is. The data have spoken against them, and they're now way, way out of whack. They're an outlier in global financial policy. And so I think there's plenty of room for the Fed to correct that.
And that's White House National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett with me on Fox Business. This is Maria Bartiromo's Wall Street this weekend on the Federal Reserve keeping interest rates between 4.25% and 4.5%, unchanged since last December. Jay Powell's term as Fed chairman is.
You see, I bought my house in 2017 at 3.8, numbers that we don't see today. So he needs to bring that down back to when president was in office. But this guy, he's doing his best to go up against Trump. Let's face it, he got to go.
Up next May, and President Trump is expected to replace him. Frustrated by his unwillingness to cut interest rates, potential successors include Kevin Hassett, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, and my next guest right now. Joining me now in this Sunday Morning Futures exclusive is Kevin Warsh, who served as a member of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors from 2006 to 2011. It's great to see you, Kevin.
Great to be with you, Maria.
Thank you so much for being here. You know, President Trump has been trying to get Jay Powell to cut rates for a long time. We all know what we're talking about. $36+ trillion in debt, $9 trillion in debt that is turning over this year. Shouldn't it be part of the Fed's thinking to say, okay, we're spending more money on interest just to hold that debt than we do on defense spending. I understand the Fed has a mandate, but should you become the chairman of the Fed, is this something that you would be thinking about in terms of lowering rates being a positive for the president dealing with the nation's debt?
So the president's right to be frustrated with the Jay Powell and the Federal Reserve. Inflation comes when the government spends too much. That's the spending you're talking about, and prints too much. And the government's done just that thing over the last 4 or 5 years. The government needs to put its fiscal house in order and its monetary house in order. The president took a good shot at putting the fiscal house in order through this tax bill. We're going to grow a lot more than the Congressional Budget Office says. The U.S. is on the cusp of, I think, a radical improvement in our productive capacity. The tax bill is part of it. Deregulatory policy is part of it. Spending reductions are part of it. And the Fed needs to get on board.
I mean, look, President Trump is doing his part. I mean, a lot of hysteria over his tariffs, and yet look what just happened. The tariffs actually brought in $27 billion for the month, customs duties. You're talking about $100 billion on an annualized basis for tariffs, and we have a budget surplus for the month of June. Should the Federal Reserve be cutting interest rates right now?
So in a word, yes. Maria, it's quite simple. Why is it that money and financial conditions are so loose on Wall Street and considerably tighter on Main Street? Because the Fed has the policy mix exactly wrong. It has a big balance sheet like we're in the 2008 crisis, the 2020 pandemic, and has rates that are too high. It needs to shrink the Fed balance sheet and cut interest rates. In so doing, Main Street can get a much lower cost of credit. First-time home buyers can find their way into houses, and the policy mix would be right. I don't know if I'm just saying that because I grew up 200 miles from here in a sort of place far from the bright lights in big city. But Main Street needs to get its break, and it's high time they do it, and the Fed can be part of that.
Now, the president has talked about the fact that Jay Powell also used money for new headquarters of the Federal Reserve. Bill Pulte, the head of the FHFA, wants Jay Powell to resign over it. What do you make of that money being used for new headquarters?
So it's outrageous. I had that job when I was at the Fed more than a decade ago. A colleague of mine and I were responsible for the Fed budget and the budgets of the reserve banks. And of course, the bureaucracy comes and says they want new shiny buildings. I can't imagine that that's a good use of taxpayer money. You know, maybe a new paint job, maybe some fresh computer terminals, maybe some brand new models at the Fed so we can improve the conduct of monetary policy, have a better understanding of the economy. So I wasn't surprised, but it's the wrong use of taxpayer money. $4 billion could be otherwise better spent. But I think it's actually more important than that. The Fed has lost its way. It's lost its way in supervision. It's lost its way in monetary policy. And all this big money on big fancy buildings is just another indication. Why does that matter, Maria? It matters because what matters most to the Fed is credibility. The Fed has to look like a serious, sober institution. And if you look back to where we were last September, the Fed cut rates 50 basis points before the election.
Right before the election.
Another 50 basis points after. Hadn't done that kind of thing around an election in 50 years. But what happened? Markets are smart. The Fed cut rates. Long-term interest rates went up almost a percentage point. That's because they're losing credibility. Whatever happens next, whatever decisions the president makes, the next head of the Fed and the Federal Reserve needs to rebuild that credibility. So when you cut rates, you know what happens? Rates fall across the yield curve so that small businesses and homeowners can start to afford things that are right now only affordable on Wall Street.
The president has been considering you as the successor to Jay Powell. He said some very nice things about you to me recently when I was talking with him. Powell's term is up in May, but there's also an opening in the Federal Reserve in January. Would you be poised to accept the position on the board in January?
I had that job. I was a governor for 6 years during the financial crisis. It's a great job to have. It's up to the president to make whatever decisions he wants. But I think what we need is regime change at the Fed. And that's not just about the chairman. It's about a whole range of people. It's about changing their mindset and their models. And frankly, it's about breaking some heads because the way they've been doing business is not working. Maybe in New York, maybe in Washington, people think that it's great to have a Fed chair as a martyr. But that's not what the American people need. They need a reformer to fix this so that the Federal Reserve can get on the right side. I'll just leave you with this, Maria. This period reminds me of the 1990s. What's happening now is the most transformative time in American economic history in a very long time. Productivity should be booming in the next 5 to 10 years because of technology. The U.S. should be at the very forefront of that. The president calls it the golden age, and he could well be right about this. Alan Greenspan kept rates low because he knew these policies were structurally disinflationary. The Fed doesn't have that view, and they're working against that agenda. If you recognize what an important moment this is, the Fed needs to be part of it, and the Fed needs to understand where we are in our economic future.
I guess what I was getting at is, would it be a scenario where the president would put you in to the governor's role in January and then ultimately make you chairman come May? But in terms of the broad macro story right now, what would be the impact of a cut in interest rates? What kind of growth are you expecting now? And would that accelerate with a cut in rates?
So I think it would. I think the economy is in reasonable shape right now. I think the economy is actually improving. Most of my peers think the economy is in terrible shape, that the president's tariffs are going to do harm. And so what do we hear from the Federal Reserve? We hear that inflation was first the fault of Vladimir Putin. Then we heard it was the fault of the pandemic. And now Chairman Powell and others say inflation's the fault of the president. No, Congress gave this responsibility to the Federal Reserve. They're responsible for inflation. It is their choice. They made the great mistake, which caused this great surge in inflation. We can ill afford them to make another great mistake. I feel like they're fighting a bit the last war, keeping rates higher than they otherwise need to be. Well, the next war is going to look a lot different, and the U.S. can win it.
Yeah, you never hear a word about Joe Biden's inflation, which was 40-year highs from the Federal Reserve. Kevin, it's great to have you this morning. Thank you so much.
Great to be with you.
All right, Kevin Warsh joining us, former Federal Reserve governor.
Yes, so we're entering the Trump golden age. A lot of people hate to hear that or hear those words, but yes, we are entering golden age. Everything's just getting better. And the problem is that it's getting better behind the scene because the fake media, the fake news don't want to report it. They don't want to talk about it. All they do is try to gaslight situations, to try to badmouth what Trump is doing. And that's it. They look to see what negative things is Trump putting forward, never pointing out the greatness, how he's ending wars all over, how the economy is doing much, much better. Interest rates are going down, and people are just seeing more money in their pockets thanks to Trump. So I want to be the ones to say it. We are entering the Trump golden age. All right. It's going to go down in history as the best time we've seen in years. But you know what? My name is Noel here at Verbal on Life. Make sure to give the video a thumbs up. And shout out to those of you who commented. We have your good parts. Shout out to, Gord Parts. Gord Pats. I'm learning here. But yes, maybe Trump, the only bad thing that Trump done so far is not release the client list after promising that he was going to release the client list. So that's the one thing that he's done bad. Because you know what? Nobody's 10 for 10. Nobody's perfect in life. So Trump right now, I would say is 9 for 10. Is he on that list, on the PDF list? Maybe. We don't know, and we're probably never going to know. It got to be so many powerful people on there that they made that phone call to Trump and told him, can't release it. It's too much damage to release the list. So we don't know, and let's see what the feds are going to say, the FBI, because that one guy, Bongino, talking about he might quit, but it might just be a stunt. Watch him come back next week talking about, I thought about it. I thought about quitting. Because quitting, I don't think it's an option for anybody who is in that position. Like you are there, you are behind the scene, you could see behind the curtains, and then you're going to quit? That doesn't even make sense. So it's up to him to decide. And like that type of job is a job about power. It doesn't have to do anything with money. You know, government jobs don't really pay well in comparison to private sector jobs. So when you get a job like that, it's about power. Like Trump has the ultimate power. But before he even took that job as president, he was a billionaire. And as a matter of fact, they're saying, well, he said that he took the job getting paid $0. So government jobs is all about powers and what power you hold. And Trump is going to do everything to make things right. With that said, comment down below. Comment down below. Let me know what you think. Remember to give this video a thumbs up. I'm trying to get a co-host. That's my co-host in the background. And I'm trying to get her to sit here while I record the video. Yesterday, she was on the other side of the living room. And now she is visible. Slowly but surely, I'm going to get her to sit here. You know, she was an ex-model. So if I could get a model here on the show, I think it would look great. So if I could get her to sit here, it's hard to get in front of a camera. It's hard to let people judge you, but it is what it is. I told her she doesn't have to comment, just sit and quietly watch. Quietly enjoy the program like I do. And that's it. Dímelo de. She even got a cool name, Odechi. Ven, siéntate aquí. I just told her in Spanish, come sit next to me. But she's gangster. She doesn't even acknowledge that I'm talking. Just sits there quietly watching television. Insane. But the trick to life is not to give up. So I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up on her. I told her there's no love. It's just following instructions. It is what it is. She doesn't really have a choice. The instructions are sit here. I mean, she has a choice not to sit there, but she doesn't have a choice in dealing with me. That is the best relationship on earth. You know, when you're with somebody, you got no choice but to deal with them. That's crazy. But again, who else made a comment here? Amber made a comment. And again, just giving Crooks, the guy who shot Trump, credibility, or not credibility, but saying that he was a Republican and that Republicans are the crazy ones in our country trying to destroy people, trying to murder people. But let's be honest, it's not the Republicans doing it. It is the Democrats. And they're using the narrative that it's the Republicans, they're the bad ones. When we know, no, the Democrats are the bad ones. That's what we know, and we got to say it. We got to be honest. What should I tell Odechi to come and say here? And look at the fly. Ode, ven, siéntate aquí, dile hola a la cámara. I got to use the computer camera for today because my phone fell, and my phone is actually my YouTube camera, and it is what it is. By the way, I'm going to open up a new channel. I'm trying to figure out what name to give it. I think the name and the narrative are the two most important things about any channel. And what's the narrative? What message is trying to send out there to people, and will people even care? Just like this one, Verbal on Life, is about me being verbal on life. Everything about life. Not just one thing, but predominantly politics, because politics is the modern age movie that is just keeping us watching, especially with Trump on the front line. That is the best TV ever. Trump going on TV and talking to us, and him going through hell, showing us that the government could be much, much better. And it's all been a lie to just keep us as slave. Like the Democrats did a good job keeping us a slave, giving us a little bit of money, giving women money to get rid of their husband, which makes you think. I'm going through a divorce now, and then my suggestions to young boys, I got a boy, to young men, marriage is not worth it. And when I say marriage, I'm talking about signing the documents. The best thing to do is have a wedding ceremony. They look beautiful. Sure, have a party, people dancing, everybody getting together. Amazing. But there's no need to sign documents before or after the wedding. So that's my only tip to people. Don't sign government documents. Not worth it. Right now, I'm in a divorce proceeding and I'm battling my wife who walked away from the wedding, filed for divorce, and just filed with her lawyer that she wants $120,000 for 6 years of marriage. Like, where am I supposed to get that money? Who are you talking to? I ain't going to go rob a bank. And talking about, well, if you can't give me 120 one day, just let me get that at 1,000 a month for 10 years. Jesus, I'm going through hell. Hitting me over the head with numbers that I chose astronomical. Like, I've never seen that. I never asked anybody in my life for $120,000. And here we got an individual asking me for it. In any case, what's today? Today's Sunday, so I'm going to work next week to make sure my lawyer can make a good argument and not let her have all that money. Not even half, not even 60. But the thing with politics, the thing with courts is that it's an emotional thing. The judge that sees me giving an individual so much money as unfair, because it's about fairness, in my opinion. And courts is all about opinions. Hopefully the judge will side with me in thinking about fairness. Here I am, a disabled individual with my own problems, and now I got to figure out where to find $120,000 to give it away. So it's like, what? The individual going to live off of me now? Insane. That type of money that I've never seen. I couldn't get Audrey to come and sit next to me. It is what it is. Anyway, comment down below, what should I tell my co-host? The best place to sit is next to me, not so far ahead. She won't even wave at the camera. Oh, déjale así con la mano. Saludo así con la mano. Vete ahí donde tú estás. Tú puedes hacer así con la mano. O así con el dedo. Dile hola, hola a todo el mundo, ¿cómo están? Levanta la mano, aunque sea la mano. Así. Nope. Couldn't get her to lift her hand up. But you know what? At least she looked in this direction. You see what I'm saying? Progress. It's all about progress, one step at a time. She looked at the camera. She looked in our direction. Eventually, I'll get her to raise that hand and come sit next to me. Watch. Today is Sunday, July 13th, 2:30 in the afternoon. With that said, is she hiding behind the couch? I'm going to make magic happen and get her to come to the front and sit next to me. So then you guys can let me know what you guys think. Can she still be a model? Or is she done? Where is she going? Oh, there. All right. Since she left, I'm going to do the same and get out of here. By the way, give the video a thumbs up. My name is Noel. We're a co-host with my co-host, Odechi. Hopefully you enjoyed the show enough to give it a thumbs up. Peace.